復返我哋公務小組委員會今日嘅會議。咁而家我哋要轉咗另一個會議場地。咁我呢度咧就同各位解釋一下行管會嘅。
Here I'd like to explain to you the instruction from the Electoral Commission. Those who were led away from the previous conference room can be prohibited from entering the public gallery of this meeting. So the remaining part of this meeting will only be broadcast over the internet, and the public gallery will not be open for this meeting. So members of the public cannot enter this conference room or the public gallery of this room. Mr. Gary Fan, Mr. Chairman, why are you handling this matter like this? Well, just now when the chairman suggested that the venue be changed, this point was not raised. We would like to understand how this meeting is to proceed. The council and members of the public are to monitor the government. So now we're not able to do so. Why are you taking the public away so that they cannot continue to sit in at this meeting? Mr. Fan, if we continued our meeting at conference room 1, I'll still observe the instruction from the Electoral Commission. As I said, members of the public were shouting in the other conference room, and as I explained, we can prohibit them from entering the conference room and the public gallery. This has nothing to do with the change of venue. Just now, it's difficult for me to decide to continue with the meeting in conference room 1 because it's difficult to handle the public. Mr. Chairman, when you chose to suspend the meeting, you actually would like to resume the order of the meeting. You cannot rule out the possibility that members of the public will remain silent, and then we can continue with our meeting. And Mr. Chairman, can you let us have the provisions that you just mentioned for our reference? Yes, clerk, please do so. Mr. Albert Chan. Mr. Chairman, I understand your suggestion. However, this issue should be handled from 2 angles. Just now when we had our meeting in the conference room 1, some members of the public shouted, and the chairman had decided to ask some of those members of the public to leave. And then you suspended the meeting, and we're now in this conference room. However, not everybody in the public gallery was warned or yelled. However, after you've changed the meeting venue to this room, those members of the public who did not disturb the meeting and members of the media are not allowed in. And actually, our security guards already read to those shouting members of the public the rules, the relevant rules of the LegCo. Of course, it's justifiable for those provisions to be invoked, but if you prohibit all the remaining members of the public and members of the media to sit in at this meeting, it may not be proper. Well, I welcome comments from members. Mr. Chairman, can you separate the 2 groups of people? Actually, our security officials had already asked those yelling members of the public to leave. Well, yes, they're asked to leave, but not everybody in the public gallery yelled. Well, I think we all witnessed what happened just now? Everybody in the public gallery just now was shouting and causing disturbance. We all witnessed that. Mr. Kwok Him, Mr. Chairman, we should act in accordance with our rules of procedure. Anybody disturbing the meeting should be driven away. However, for those members of the public who did not disturb the meeting, Chairman, you should not prohibit them from entering the public gallery. I think the public gallery should be open to them. I don't think we should spend more time on this. We have already warned and driven away those members of the public who yelled in the public gallery. Well, we have to handle our motions as quickly as possible. Any other comments? Mr. Chan Kam Lam? Mr. Chairman, today's meeting was disturbed by the shouting of some members of the public and had to be suspended. That's not ideal. Right from the very beginning, Mr. Chairman, you repeatedly warned them. Failing that, you suspended the meeting. In order that the meeting can continue in the normal manner, I support your decision. From how we handled the motions, we can see that at the last meeting is because some members of the public shouted in the public gallery. That led to the honourable member reading out the motion being vague, and so we had to vote again on that motion. So the shouting of those members of the public in the public gallery had disturbed our meeting. So, Mr. Chairman, you have to strictly observe the rules of procedure. For those members of the public who continuously shouted, they had to be handled. So your decision was proper, so I support your approach of handling the meeting. As for changing the meeting venue, this morning, when we handled those members of the public, they lingered on. They were unwilling to heed the repeated advice of our security officials who read out the order of the Electoral Commission and our rules of procedure. So the change of venue was effected in a reasonable, rational, and compassionate manner. As for those members of the public who did not shout, given the present situation, it's very difficult to differentiate them from those who shouted, because this morning the shouting phenomenon was very serious. I think not many members of the public did not yell in the public gallery. Well, yes, we can handle the media and the public separately. Well, this morning I was worried about the media as well. Some of them stood up in order to take photographs, so we can consider allowing the media in. Dr. Fernando Cheung.
Fernando Cheung. Thank you, Chairman. Meeting is an open meeting, and allowing the media to go to the public gallery is our tradition. So first of all, I think we should continue to allow the media to enter the public gallery. I also agree with Mr. Chen Kam Lam and Mr. Yip Kok Kim, where you have members of the public who are shouting and causing disruption, and if they have already been expelled by our security staff, then I think I agree that we can ban them from entering the public gallery. For those who have not caused any disruption, and we want to continue to listen to our proceedings, I think we should continue to open the meeting to these people. So perhaps you can consult with our security staff. If they're able to differentiate those who caused disruption and those who had not caused disruption, then I think there's no reason why we should disallow them from entering the public gallery. Could the Secretariat also, say something? Our security staff is dealing with the situation, so we may need to make inquiries about the situation outside the the door to the public gallery on the 3rd floor. If the chairman wishes to seek such information, we may need to interrupt the meeting for us to do that. Mr. Wong Kok-heng, I think we should exercise good time management. I don't think we should say anything more. I think we can simply invite the reporters to enter the public gallery. How can we mix up the media with those who've caused disruption? And we let the security staff to differentiate those who've caused disruption and those who have not. Okay, in that case, we'll allow the media to enter the public gallery, and the security staff is still dealing with those members of the public. So for the time being, we will not allow the general public to enter the public gallery. Why don't you leave it to the security staff? They will differentiate those who have caused disruption and those who have not. And after the matter has been resolved by the security staff, and those who are not causing disruption, we can allow them to come into the public gallery. I think we should immediately reconvene our meeting. So that's clear. I think we can now open the public gallery to the public, but those who cause disruptions, we have the right to expel them according to the Electoral Commission's directives. Okay, we now move on to the amended motion number 17. That is, this panel agrees to deal with the motion number 0017 proposed by Mr. Gary Fan. Mr. Gary Fan. Chairman, I would like to claim division. Okay, the division bell will ring for a minute. In accordance with Section 32(8) of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, move, and Mr. Albert Chen seconds the motion, namely that in the light that many public projects have seriously resulted in serious cost overrun, the panel urges the government to promise not to apply for additional funding in respect of the South Vicente landfill extension project. All right. We will vote by a show of hands. All those who are in favor of the motion, please put up your hands. The Secretary will note down those who are for the motion. We have Mr. Gary Fan, Fernando Jiang, Albert Chan, and Mr. Wu Chi-wai in favor of the motion. Those against? Those against the motions are Mr. Alex Mack, Mr. Wong Kok-heng, Mr. Wong Chi-chang, Mr. Tam Yo-chung, Miss Elizabeth Kwok, Mr. Tang Ban, Mr. Chen Kam-lam, Mr. Che Wai-chin, Mr. Yip Kok-chin, him, Ms. Cheng Lai-wan, Chung Shi-kan, Mr. Chi-min, Mr. Tin Pak-shun. So why can't we simply go for electronic voting? We don't have the facility. Why is that the case? We have the black and the red and the green buttons. We cannot, do we have any abstentions? No. So 14 against, we have 14 against and 4 for the motion. So the motion is not carried. Next, we deal with motion 0018. 18. That is, this panel agrees with Mr. Gary Fan's proposal that we deal with motion number 18 in accordance with Section 32(8) of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC. I would like to call for division. Okay, the division bell will ring for a minute. In accordance with Section 32(a) of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, proposes and Mr. Albert Chen seconds the motion, which is that in the light that the extension of the Southeast NT landfill will cause disruptions to the district, we would like to urge the administration to immediately suspend the operations of the Southeast NT landfill after the extension project has started. Okay, we will now proceed to the vote. All those in favor? We have Albert Chen, Fernando Cheung, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, Mr. Gary Fan, and Mr. Chen Ka-lok. Those against? We have Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi-chung, Mr. Mac Mei Kuan, Mr. Tam Yu Chong, Ms. Elizabeth Court, Mr. Chen Hang Ban, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Che Wai Chun, Ms. Cheng Lai Wan, Mr. Chen Hak Kan, Mr. Christopher Chong, Mr. Yik Chi Ming, Mr. Tin Michael Tin. So we have 5 in favor, 13 against, so the motion is not carried. Thank you, Mr. Michael Tin. Can we have technicians to help us so that we can go back to electronic voting? I think we invested a lot of money on the voting system. Well, for this conference room, we do not have the electronic voting system installed. Basically, it's in room 1 and the chamber that we have the electronic voting facilities. Well, the system has been built in, but we've never. I think we can certainly propose to the Commission that we should install such facilities in this room. All right, the panel now, in accordance with Section 32(a) of our Rules of Procedure, will now deal with motion number 19. Chairman, I'd like to claim a division. Okay, the division bell will ring for 1 minute. Pursuant to Section 32(a) of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, proposes, Mr. Albert Chen seconds the motion. That is, that since the extension of the Southeast NT landfill project will result in 10,380 trees to be felled, the committee urges the government to plant 20,000 new trees in compensation after the extension project has started. Well, those who are in favor, please put up your hands. We have Albert Chen, Fernando Cheung, Mr. Chen Ka-lok, and Mr. Gary Fan. 4 members are in favor of the motion. Those against? Those against, we have Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi-chung, Mr. Tam Yu Chong, Mr. Mac Mei Kuan, Mr. Elizabeth Court, Chen Hang Ban, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Che Wai Chun, Ms. Ann Chang, Mr. Gary Chen, Mr. Christopher Chong, Mr. Yik Chi Ming. So we have 4 in favor. Do we have abstentions? No. So 4 in favor, 12 against, so the motion is not carried. Next, we move on to the next motion, that is, this committee agrees to deal with the request by Mr. Gary Fan pursuant to Section 32(a) of the rules of procedure, Chairman, I'd like to claim a division. Mr. Fan, would you read out your motion? In accordance with Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, proposes, Mr. Albert Chen seconds the motion that the government should undertake to, by way of compulsory waste segregation, reduce the disposal of waste in order that the operation of the extended Southeast NT landfill will not operate for more than 6 years before we can proceed to extend the Southeast NT landfill. Those members who are in favor, will you please put up your hands? We have Albert Chan, Fernando Zhang, Chen Kar-lok, and Gary Fan. 4 members are in favor. Those against: Mac May Kuan, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Leung Chi Chang, Tam Yu Chung, Elizabeth Port, Chen Hang Ban, Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Che Wai Chun, Ann Chang, Gary Chan, Christopher Chung, Mr. Yik Chi Ming. Abstention. We have no abstention. So we have 4 for, and 12 against the motion. I declare that the motion is defeated. Next, we move on to the next motion. That is, this committee agrees with Mr. Gary Fan's request pursuant to Section 32A of our Rules of Procedure, Motion 21. I'd like to, while the security staff are dealing with the media and the members of the public, why is it that we're not seeing the residents from Tseung Kwan O coming back to the public gallery? It's been more than 10 minutes already. Perhaps the media are now covering other news outside. Andy has confirmed that the public gallery is now open to the public again. Chairman, I'd like to call for a division. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. Pursuant to Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, proposes Mr. Albert Chen seconds the motion that the government should increase the fees per ton of the inert construction materials for waste containing more than 50% of inert construction materials, so that the Southeast NT landfill after extension will not need to operate for more than 6 years before we extend the Southeast NT landfill.
Those
who are in favor, please put up your hands. We have Albert Chen, Fernando Zhang, Mr. Chen Kar-lok, and Mr. Gary Fan in favor of the motion. Those members who are against the motion, we have Mac May Kuan, Wong Kok Heng, Leung Chi Chang, Tam Yu Chung, Elizabeth Port, Chen Hang Ban, Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Che Wai Chun, Chang Lai Wan, Mr. Gary Chan, Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. Yik Chi Ming. Abstention? No, none. So we have 4 members for and 12 against the motion. I declare that the motion is not carried. The next motion is that this committee agrees with Mr. Gary Fan's request pursuant to Section 32A of our Rules of Procedure to deal with motion number 22. All those in favor? Chairman, I'd like to call for a division. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. May I read out the motion now, Chairman? In accordance with Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, proposes Mr. Albert Chen seconds the motion that we should urge the government to increase the sorting fees for per ton of waste should be increased to more than the current level of $100. So that the Southeast NT landfill, upon extension, will not need to operate more for more than 6 years. All those in favor? We have Albert Chan, Fernando Zhang, Chen Kat-lok, and Gary Fan. Those who are against, please put up your hands. We have Mac Mei Kuan, Wong Kok Heng, Leung Chi Chang, Tam Yu Chung, Kwok Pui Fan, Chen Hang Pan, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Chia Wei Chun, San Chang, Gary Chan, Christopher Chung, and Mr. Yik Chi Ming. Abstention? None. We have 4 in favor, 12 against the motion. I declare that the motion is not carried. Next, this committee agrees with Mr. Gary Chan's request pursuant to Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure, motion number 23. All those in favor? Chairman, I would like to call for a division. Okay, the division bell will ring for a minute. Pursuant to Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, proposes, Mr. President seconds, that the municipal solid waste in Hong Kong has gone up by 80% in the last 30 years, but the population at the same time has gone up by 36%. All this result is due to the fact that the government has been lax in its efforts to dealing with waste at source and adopting a stalling tactic. As a result, we are facing a crisis. The government should no longer use the pretext that we are now facing the crisis of the saturation of landfill, and before they can prove that it has a determination to do something about waste reduction and compel the society to accept the treatment of this facility. The government should learn its lessons and undertake to carry out waste reduction measures. We have Albert Chan, Fernando Zhang, Chen Kat-lok, and Gary Fan in favor. Those against, Mac Mei Kuan, Wong Kok Heng, Leung Chi Hung, Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chen Hang Pan, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Chia Wei Chun, Mr. Chen Lai Wan, Mr. Chen Hak Kan, Mr. Chung Shi Kan. Abstention? None. So we have 4 for, 10 against. I declare that the motion is not carried. Next, this committee agrees with Mr. Gary Chan's request pursuant to Section 32A of our Rules of Procedure, motion number 24. Chairman, I'd like to call for a division. Okay, the division bell will ring for a minute. Pursuant to Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, move Albert Chan second motion that we should urge the government to, before extending the Southeast NT landfill, review the food-wise program and undertake to reduce kitchen waste by 40% within 24 months. All those members who are in favor, please put up your hand. We're Albert Chan, Fernando Zhang, Chen Kat-lok, and Mr. Gary Fan. Those against, we have Ms. Mei Kuan, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Tam Yu Chung, Chen Hang Pan, Mr. Kam Lam, Mr. Chia Wei Chun, Mr. An Chang, Mr. Chen Hak Kan, Mr. Chung Shi Kan, and Mr. Yik Chi Ming.
棄權嘅
Those abstain? No. 4 for, 11 against. The motion is negatived. We now deal with this motion, this council this committee agrees with to deal with Mr. Gary Fan's motion under Rule 32A. Chairman, I ask for a division. The bell ring for 1 minute. Mr. Fan, you may read out your motion. According to Rule 32A of the procedure of PWSC, I, Gary Fan, move the following motion as seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. We urge the administration to review the Hong Kong Food Wise campaign before the construction of a SENT and reduce the food waste dump in landfill by 40% in coming 12 months.
邊度啊？我講咗，頭先講過。又有咩？哦。而家又收到新嘅一啲議案啦，范國威。
Now we have new motions moved by Mr. Fan.
贊成嘅委員請舉手。
Those in favour, please raise their hands. Ms. Albert Chan, Mr. Fernando Cheung, Kenneth Chan, and Mr. Gary Fan, 4 in favour. Those against, please raise their hands. Those who are against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chung, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chen Hang Pan, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Tony Che, Ms. Ann Chang, Mr. Chen Akan, Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. Frankie Yik. Those abstain? 4 for, 11 against. I declare the motion negatived. Next, we are to deal with the following motion. This committee agrees to deal with Mr. Gary Fan's motion under 32A of procedure, number 0026. Mr. Chairman, I claim a division. And the bell ring for a minute. According to Rule 32A of the procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, move the following motion as seconded by Ms. Albert Chan. We urge the administration to first give undertaking that in the coming 12 months, 40% of waste reduction should be achieved under the blueprint before expanding the SENT. Those in favour, please raise their hands. There are Mr. Albert Chan, Mr. Fernando Cheung, Mr. Gary Fan, 3. Those against, please raise their hands. Those against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chung, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chen Hang Pan, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Dong Di Che, Ms. Ann Cheng, Mr. Chen Akan, Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. Frankie Yik. I'm Mr. Abraham Shack. Anybody abstaining? 2. 2 abstentions. 3 for, 12 against, 3 abstentions. The motion is negatived. We are now dealing with this. We agree to deal with the motion moved by Gary Fan 32A. According to procedure number 20, motion 27. Chairman, I claim division. According to 32A of the PWSC procedure, I, Gary Fan, move the following motion as seconded by Ms. Albert Chan. We urge the administration to first give undertaking that in the coming 24 months, there was a typo, to guarantee that it would achieve 40% cut in waste as set out in the recycling blueprint before expanding the SCNT.
贊成嘅委員請舉手。
Those in favour, please raise your hands. Those who are in favour, Mr. Albert Chan, Mr. Fernando Chang, Mr. Gary Fan. Those against, please raise your hands. Those who are against, they are Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Ju Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chong, Mr. Chen Heng Pan, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Tony Che, Ms. Ann Cheng, Mr. Chen Hakan, Mr. Christopher Chong, Mr. Abraham Sheikh, Mr. Frankie Yik. Those abstain, please raise your hands. 2. Mr. Kenneth Chan and Mr. Alan Leung. 3 for, 12 against, 2 abstentions. The motion is negatived. We are to deal with the motion that this committee agrees with to deal with motion moved by Mr. Gary Fan under Rule 32A. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Chairman, I claim a division. The bell ring for 1 minute. Those in favour, please raise their hands. Members who are for, Mr. Albert Chan, Mr. Fernando Chang, Mr. Gary Fan, Mr. Kenneth Chan, 4. Those against, please raise their hands. Those who are against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. M. Yu Chong, Mr. Chen Heng Pan, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Tony Che, Ms. Ann Chang, Mr. Chen Hakan, Mr. Christopher Chong, Mr. Abraham Sheikh, Mr. Frankie Yik. Those who abstain, 4 for, 12 against. The motion is negatived. Motion number 29. The wording is exactly the same as motion 0004. They are entirely different. They are different. One mentioned the target of reducing waste by 40%, the other doesn't. 29. And which one? Number 4, 0004. Now this is number 29. Yes, the secretary is right. I thought that it was 28. Now we have already decided not to deal with number 4, so we don't deal with number 29. Okay, let us deal with number 30, 0030. This committee agrees to deal with the motion moved by Mr. Fan according to Rule 32A. Chairman, I claim a division. The bell ring for 1 minute. According to Rule 32A of the procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, move the following motion, seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. We urge the administration to that the administration must first give the undertaking that in the coming 12 months implement PRS, producer responsibility system, to extend to plastic containers, packaging materials, drink containers, public tires, wood, and all battery before expanding the SENT landfill. Please, those in favour, please raise their hands. Those in favour are Mr. Albert Chan, Mr. Fernando Chang, Dr. Kenneth Chan, and Mr. Gary Fan. Those who are against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chang Hang Ban, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Tony Che, Mr. Yip Kwok Him, Ms. Ann Chang, Mr. Chan Hak Han, Mr. Christopher Chong, and also Mr. Abraham Sheikh and Mr. Frankie Yik. Any abstention? No. 4 for, 13 against. The motion is negatived. Next motion 0031. This committee agrees to deal with Mr. Fan's motion under 32A. Chairman, I claim for a division. The bell ring for 1 minute. According to Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I, Gary Fan, move the following motion, seconded by Ms. Albert Chan. We urge the administration must give the undertaking that in the coming 24 months implement the PRS to cover plastic containers, packaging materials, string container, rubber tire, wood, or batteries before expanding the SCNT landfill.
贊成嘅委員請舉手。
Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those in favor, Mr. Albert Chan, Mr. Fernando Cheung, Mr. Kenneth Chan, Mr. Gary Fan, 4 of them. Those who are against. Those who are against are Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Ms. Elizabeth Pat, Mr. Cheng Han Pan, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Tony Che, Mr. Kwok Kim, Ms. Ann Chang, Mr. Chan Hak Han, Mr. Christopher Chong, Mr. Frankie Yik, and Mr. Abraham Sheikh. 4 for, 14 against. Any abstention, please? None. The motion is negatived. The Secretary has reminded me that I said that I had received the motion moved by additional motions by Mr. Gary Fan, 49 plus 55 earlier, altogether 104. And we are now dealing with number 32. The Secretary will check that we have been doing that, in fact. Please check whether they are relevant. Yes, we do. We now deal with the next motion. This subcommittee agrees to deal with rule the motion 0032 to move under 32A of the procedure of the committee. Those in favor, please raise a hand. Chairman, I claim a division. The bell ring for 1 minute. According to Rule 32A of the procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, move the following motion, seconded by Ms. Albert Chan, that we urge the administration must give the undertaking that in the coming 36 months extend the PRS to cover plastic containers, packaging materials, string containers, rubber tire, wood, and all batteries before expanding the SCNT landfill. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those who are in favor are Mr. Albert Chan, Mr. Fernando Cheung, Mr. Kenneth Chan, Mr. Gary Fan. Those who are against, please raise their hands. Those who are against are Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Ms. Elizabeth Pat, Mr. Chang Hang Pan, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Tony Che, Mr. Kwok Kim, Ms. Ann Chang, Mr. Chan Hak Han, Mr. Christopher Chong, Mr. Frankie Yik. Those who abstain? None. 4 for, 13 against. The motion is negatived. The next motion, the PWSC agrees to deal with PWSC Fans, Gary Fans motion number 0033 as under Rule 32A. Chairman, I claim division. The rule, 1 minute for the bell. According to Rule 32A of the Rules of Procedures, I move the following motion. Seconded by Secretary Chan. The administration must first legislate before the 2018 prohibit the sending of commercial waste and commercial food waste and waste paper to the endpoint disposal facilities before expanding the SCNT landfill. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those in favor, Ms. Albert Chan, Mr. Fernando Cheung, Mr. Kenneth Chan, Mr. Gary Fan, 4 of them. Those who are against, please raise their hand. Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Ms. Elizabeth Kat, Mr. Chen Hang Pan, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Tony Che, Mr. Kok Him, Ms. Ann Chang, Mr. Chen Ha Kan, Mr. Christopher Chong, Mr. Frankie Yik. 4 for, 13 against, no abstention. I think the motion is negatived, and we now deal with the following motion. We agree to deal with the motion moved by Mrs. Gary Fan, 32A, number 0034. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Chairman, I claim a division. The bell ring for 1 minute. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those in favor, Mr. Albert Chan, Mr. Fernando Cheung, Mr. Kenneth Chan, and Mr. Gary Fan, 4 members. Those who are against, please raise their hands. Those who are against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Chen Hang Pan, Ms. Elizabeth Kat, Mr. Tony Che, Mr. Kok Him, Ms. Ann Chang, Mr. Chen Ha Kan, Mr. Christopher Chong, Mr. Frankie Yik. Those who abstain? None. 4 for, 13 against. I think the question is negatived. And now we deal with the next motion. The PWSC agrees to deal with Mr. Gary Fan's motion under 32A of the PWSC number 35. Chairman, I claim a division.
1 分鐘。
The division bell will ring for 1 minute.
0035號嚇，對，而家係。
We're now voting on number 0035.
佢讀咗出嚟范議員。
Mr. Fan, would you please read out the motion? In accordance with Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I move this motion, which is seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. The committee urges the administration to announce and review in the next few years the implementation of the progress and effectiveness of the waste reduction measures in relation to resource recycling blueprint before extending the Southeast New Territories landfill. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Mr. Albert Chan, Dr. Fernando Cheung, Dr. Kenneth Chan and Mr. Gary Fan, 4-4. Those against, please raise their hands. Those against, Mr. Alice Mang, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chung, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chan Kem Lam, Mr. Chan Ham Pan, Dr. Elizabeth Quat, Mr. Tony Dare, Mr. Ip Kok Him, Dr. Chang Lai Wan, Mr. Chan Hak Kan, Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. Abraham Shek, Mr. Frankie Yik. Abstentions? No. 4-4, 14 against. I declare the motion negatived. We now proceed to handle, that is to decide whether or not we agree to handle Mr. Gary Fan's motion 36. Mr. Gary Fan, I claim a division. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. In accordance with Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I move this motion, which is seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. This committee urges the administration to model on South Korea, that is to legislate to the effect that no eatery or canteen should use disposable utensils before extending the Southeast New Territories landfill. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those in favor, Mr. Albert Chan, Dr. Fernando Chung, Dr. Kenneth Chan, Mr. Gary Fan, 4. Those against, please raise their hands. Those against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chung, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Chen Ham Pan, Dr. Elizabeth Quat, Mr. Tony Dare, Dr. Chang Lai Wan, Mr. Chan Hak Kan, Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. Tony Yik. Abstentions? No. 4-4, 12 against. This motion is negatived. The next question is whether or not this committee agrees to handle the motion 0037 moved by Mr. Gary Fan. I claim a division, Mr. Chairman. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. In accordance with Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I, Gary Fan, move this motion, which is seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. This committee urges the LegCo meeting to first discuss whether or not the LegCo complex and LegCo meetings on how to reduce the use of paper before extending the sent landfill. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those for, Mr. Albert Chan, Mr. Gary Fan, 2. Those against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chung, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Chan Ham Pan, Dr. Elizabeth Quat, Mr. Chen Kim Po, Mr. Tony Dare, Dr. Chang Lai Wan, Mr. Chan Hak Kan, Mr. Frankie Yik, Mr. Abraham Shek. Abstentions? 1. Kenneth Chan. 2 for, 15 against, 1 abstention. This question is negatived. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a question. Can you explain why your ruling on the last motion was related to a PWSC application? Why did I abstain? Because I have this question. I have to respect your ruling. Some colleagues at my back also voiced their views, but they did not raise their hands yet. So why should this be voted upon? Mr. Chairman, you don't intend to explain? I don't intend to explain. All right, let's decide on whether or not this PWSC agrees to handle motion 0038 moved by Mr. Gary Fan. Mr. Chairman, I claim a division. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. In accordance with Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I, Gary Fan, move this motion, which is seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. This committee urges the Secretary for Justice to, when submitting documents to the court, to implement double-side printing in order to reduce the use of papers before extending sent landfill. Mr. Chairman, I think you really have to scrutinize very seriously these motions. They are irrelevant to this meeting. Well, this is asking for two.
好啊，而家做緊嗰啲嘢。
黃區議員，你嘅意見我聽到嘅。
This is about double-sided printing. Those in favor of the motion, those in favor, Mr. Albert Chan, Dr. Fernando Zhang, and Mr. Gary Fan. 3. Those against, please raise their hands. Those against, Mr. Alice Mack, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kwok Hing, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chan Kam Lam, Mr. Chan Han Pan, Mr. Chen Kim Po, Mr. Tony Dare, Mr. Ip Kwok Him, Dr. Chang Lai Wan, Mr. Chan Ha Kan, Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. Abraham Shek, Mr. Frankie Yik. Abstentions? 1. Kenneth Chan. 3, 4, 15 against, 1 abstention. This question is negatived. Now we proceed to handle whether or not this committee should handle motion 0039 moved by Mr. Gary Fan. Mr. Chairman, I claim a division. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. In accordance with Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I, Gary Fan, moves this motion, which is seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. This committee urges the government to first ensure that all animals be relocated to a safe place, to ensure that within the landfill area, these animals are relocated before extending the sent landfill. Only Mr. Gary Fan will go into these areas. Is it that you did not have sufficient time to go through these motions? I've heard your comments. Well, quiet, please. The division bell is ringing. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Clerk, those in favor, Mr. Albert Chan, Dr. Fernando Zhang, Mr. Gary Fan. 3. Those against, please raise their hands. Those against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kwok Hing, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chen Kim Po, Dr. Elizabeth Quat, Mr. Chen Kam Pan, Mr. Chen Kam Lam, Mr. Ip Kwok Him, Dr. Chang Lai Wan, Mr. Chan Ha Kan, Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. Frankie Yik, Mr. Abraham Shek. Abstentions? 1. Kenneth Chan. 3, 4, 14 against, 1 abstention. This question is negatived. Now we proceed to discuss the question whether or not this committee agrees to handle motion 0040 moved by Mr. Gary Fan. Mr. Chairman, I claim a division. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. In accordance with Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I, Gary Fan, move this motion, which is seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. This committee urges the government to set up a waste paper recovery plant in Hong Kong such that waste paper can be properly recovered and reused before extending Southeast New Territories landfill.
Those
in favor, please raise their hands. Those for Mr. Albert Chan, Dr. Fernando Chang, Dr. Kenneth Chan, and Mr. Gary Fan, 4. And Mr. To as well. Yes, 5. Those against, please raise their hands. Those against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chan Kim Paul, Dr. Elizabeth Quat, Mr. Chan Ham Pan, Mr. Chan Kam Lam, Mr. Tony Dare, Mr. Ip Kok Him, Dr. Chang Lai Wan, Mr. Chan Hak Kan, Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. Abraham Shek. Any abstentions? No. 5 for, 14 against, no abstention. This question is negatived. We now proceed to discuss the question whether or not this committee agrees to handle motion 41 moved by Mr. Gary Fan. Mr. Chairman, I claim a division. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. In accordance with 32A of the rules of procedure of the PWSC procedure, I move this motion, which is seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. Mainland visitors created a lot of waste, including disposable, sterilization, commodities, food waste, etc. This committee urges the government to first undertake a reduction of visitors under the individual visitor scheme in order to reduce tourist-generated garbage before extending the central landfill. Please do not speak from your seat without my instruction. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those for Mr. Albert Chan and Mr. Gary Fan, 2. Those against, please raise their hands. Those against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chan Kam Lam, Dr. Elizabeth Quat, Mr. Chan Kim Paul, Mr. Tony Dare, Mr. Abraham Shek, Dr. Chang Lai Wan, Mr. Ip Kok Him, Mr. Christopher Chung. Abstentions? Abstentions? Any? 2 for, 12 against, no abstention. This question is negatived. The next question to be handled is that this committee agrees to handle motion 42 moved by Mr. Gary Fan under Rule 32A. Mr. Chairman, I claim a division. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. In accordance with Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I, Gary Fan, move this motion, seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. This committee urges the government to first take away half of the garbage bins in Hong Kong, modeling on South Korea and Taiwan, such that there will be no garbage bins on our streets in order to reduce the incentives for the generation of wastes on the part of citizens before extending the Southeast New Territories landfill. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those for Mr. Albert Chan, Mr. To, Mr. Kenneth Chan, Mr. Gary Fan, 4. Those against, please raise their hands. Those against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chan Kam Lam, Mr. Chan Han Pan, Dr. Elizabeth Quat, Mr. Chan Kim Po, Mr. Tony Dare, Mr. Ip Kok Him, Mr. Christopher Chung, Dr. Chang Lai Wan, Mr. Abraham Sheikh. Any abstention? 4 for, 13 against. This question is negatived. The next question is whether or not this committee agrees to handle Motion 43 moved by Mr. Gary Fan under Rule 32A. Chairman, I claim a division. The bell will ring for 1 minute. In accordance with Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I, Gary Fan, move this motion as seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. This committee urges the government to first place 10,000 three-color recovery bins on our streets to facilitate recovery from citizens before extending the sent landfill.
Those
in favor, please raise their hands. Those for, Mr. Albert Chan, Ms. Sito, Dr. Fernando Chung, Mr. Gary Fan, Dr. Kenneth Chan. 5. Those against, please raise their hands. Those against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chan Kam Lam, Mr. Chan Han Pan, Dr. Elizabeth Quat, Mr. Tony Dare, Mr. Ip Kok Him, Dr. Chang Lai Wan, Mr. Chan Hak Kan, Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. Chan Kim Po. Any abstention? 1. Mr. Charles Mock. 5 for, 13 against, 1 abstention. This question is negatived. The next question to be voted upon is this committee agrees to handle Motion 44 moved by Mr. Gary Fan under Rule 32A. Chairman, I claim a division. The bell will ring for 1 minute. In accordance with Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I, Gary Fan, move this motion as seconded by Mr. Albert Chan. This committee urges the government to ensure that the waste plastics placed into recovery bins could be recovered and reused and would not be transported to the landfills before extending Southeast New Territories landfill. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those for, Mr. Albert Chan, Ms. Sito, Dr. Fernando Chung, Dr. Kenneth Chan, Mr. Gary Fan. 5. Those against, please raise their hands. Those against, Ms. Alice Mack, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Leung Chi Chang, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, Mr. Chan Kam Lam, Mr. Chan Han Pan, Mr. Tony Dare, Dr. Elizabeth Quat, Mr. Ip Kok Him, Dr. Chang Lai Wan, Mr. Chan Hak Kan, Mr. Christopher Chung. Are there abstentions? 5 for, 11 against, no abstention. This question is negatived.
Next, we need to deal with the motion moved by Mr. Gary Fan pursuant to Section 32A of the PWSC Rules of Procedure. Chairman, I'd like to call a division. Pursuant to Section 32A of the PWSC Rules of Procedure, I, Gary Fan, moves and Mr. Albert Chan seconds that we should urge the government to first educate the public to take the waste to the recycling boxes before or the collection points before we agree to extend the SCNT landfill.
請贊成嘅委員舉手。
All those in favor? We have Albert Chan, Sid Ho, Fernando Zhang, Kenneth Chan, and Gary Fan in favor. Those against? Alice Mack, Mr. Lan Chi Chang, Tam Yo Chung, Elizabeth Kwok, Chen Hang Ban, Chen Kam Lam, Tony Chair, Sip Kok Him, Ann Chang, Chen Hak Keung, and Christopher Chung. Abstention? None. We have 5 in favor, 11 against, so the motion is not carried. Next, we'll proceed to next, this committee agrees to deal with the motion moved by Mr. Gary Fan pursuant to Section 32A of the PWSC Rules of Procedure. Chairman, I'd like to claim a division. Okay, the bell will ring for a minute. Pursuant to Section 32A of the PWSC Rules of Procedure, I, Gary Fan, moves and Mr. Albert Chen seconds the motion that which urge the government to ensure, first of all, that all non-recyclable products will not be taken to the landfill before we extend the SNT landfill.
inclusive 佢啊，
It should be inclusive.
你嘅意見我哋審視嘅時間會考慮。
49、50都一樣出。
I think we have the same problem with motion 49 and 50. We're still dealing with motions 46, I'm sorry. They're similar. I think it's already covered. All right, those who are in favor, please put up your hands. Albert Chan, Sid Ho, Fernando Zhang, Kenneth Chan, and Gary Fan. 5 in favor. Those against? We have Alice Mack, Lan Chi Chang, Tam Yu Chung, Elizabeth Kwok, Chen Hang Ban, Chen Kam Lam, Tony Chair, Yip Kok Him, Ann Chang, Chen Hak Kan, Christopher Chung, and Mr. Frankie Yek. Abstention? None. So we have 5 in favor, 12 against the motion. The motion is not carried. Next, the committee agrees to deal with the motion moved by Mr. Gary Fan pursuant to Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure. That's 47. Chairman, I'd like to claim a division. Pursuant to Section 32A of the PWSC Rules of Procedure, I, Gary Fan, moves and Albert Chen seconds the motion that we should urge the government, first of all, to increase the support for the food bank and drastically reduce the possibility of food which is past the expiry date to become kitchen waste before we extend the SNT landfill.
請贊成嘅委員舉手。
Will those who are in favor, please put up your hands. We have Albert Chan, Sid Ho, Fernando Zhang, Kenneth Chan, and Gary Fan in favor. Those against, please put up your hands. We have Alice Mack, Lan Chi Chang, Tam Yu Chung, Chen Kam Lam, Chen Hang Ban, Elizabeth Kwok, Tony Chair, Yip Kok Him, Ann Chang, Chen Hak Kan, Christopher Chung, and Mr. Frankie Yek. Abstention? So we have 5 in favor, 12 against the motion. The motion is defeated. The next item is that this committee agrees to deal with the motion moved by Mr. Gary Fan pursuant to Section 32A of our Rules of Procedure. That's motion 48. Chairman, I'd like to claim a division. Pursuant to Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, moves and Mr. Albert Chen seconds the motion that we should urge the government, first of all, to step up the recovery of kitchen waste, so that we should start collecting kitchen waste throughout the entire territory before we extend the SCNT landfill.
贊成嘅委員請舉手。
All those in favour? We have Albert Chan, Sid Ho, Fernando Zhang, Kenneth Chan, and Gary Fan. Those against? We have Alice Mack, Wong Kok Hing, Tam Yu Chung, Leung Chi Cheung, Elizabeth Kwok, Chen Kam Lam, Tony Chair, Chen Hang Ban, Yip Kok Him, Ann Chang, Chen Hak Kan, Chung Shi Kan, and Frankie Yik. Do we have any abstentions? So we have 5 in favour, and we have 14 against, and no abstention. So the motion is not carried. Next, this committee agrees to deal with the motion number 49, moved by Gary Fan, pursuant to Section 32A of the Rules and Procedure. Chairman, I'd like to claim a division. The bell will ring for a minute. Please read out your motion. Pursuant to Section 32A of the PWSC Rules of Procedure, I, Gary Chan, move, and Mr. Albert Chan seconds the motion that which urge the government to first of all set a ceiling on the volume of waste created in every government building in order to create incentive for government departments to reduce waste before we extend the SCNT landfill. So those members who are in favour, please put up your hands. We have Albert Chan, Sid Ho, Fernando Zhang, Kenneth Chan, and Gary Fan. Those against? Alice Mack, Wong Kok Hing, Leung Chi Cheung, Tam Yu Chung, Chen Hang Ban, Elizabeth Kwok, Chen Kam Lam, Tony Chair, Yip Kok Him, Ann Chang, Chen Hak Kan, and Christopher Chung, and Frankie Yik. Abstention? We have 5 for and 13 against the motion. The motion is not carried. Next, the committee agrees to deal with motion number 50, moved by Mr. Gary Fan, pursuant to Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure. Chairman, I'd like to claim a division. According to Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, moves and Albert Chen seconds the motion that the government, first of all, set a ceiling on the volume of garbage for the Governor's House and lead by example as to how we can reduce waste before we extend the SCNT landfill. Chairman, after the meeting, could you explain whether or not the Government House is also a government building? I will not offer an explanation in response to your question. All those in favour? Albert Chan, Sid Ho, Fernando Zhang, Kenneth Chan, and Gary Fan. We have 5 again, for the motion. Those who are against, Alice Mack, Wong Kok Hing, Leung Chi Cheung, Tam Yu Chung, Elizabeth Kwok, Chen Hang Ban, Chen Kam Lam, Yip Kok Him, Ann Chang, Chanakan, Christopher Chung, and Frankie Yek. Abstention? So we have 5 in favor, 12 against the motion. The motion is not carried. Next, this committee agrees to deal with motion number 51, moved by Mr. Gary Fan pursuant to Section 32A of the PWSC Rules of Procedure. Chairman, I'd like to claim a division. The bell will ring for a minute. According to Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, moves and Albert Chen seconds the motion that the government must first of all, in the Green Belt, set up depository for organic compost to deal properly with fallen leaves, branches, and tree trunks, so that the nutrients can return to the earth and not taken to the landfills before we extend the SCNT landfill. Will those members who are in favour please put up your hands? Albert Chan, Sid Ho, Fernando Zhang, Kenneth Chan, and Gary Fan. Those against? Alice Mack, Wong Kok Hing, Leung Chi Chang, Tam Yu Chung, Chen Hang Ban, Chen Kam Lam, Elizabeth Kwok, Yip Kok Him, Ann Chang, Chanakan, and Christopher Chung, and Frankie Yek. Abstention? So we have 5 for and 12 against the motion. The motion is not carried. Next, this committee agrees to deal with motion number 52, moved by Gary Fan pursuant to Section 32A of our Rules of Procedure. Those in favour? Chairman, I would like to claim a division. Okay, the bell will ring for a minute. According to Section 32A of the PWSC Rules of Procedure, I, Gary Fan, moves and Albert Chen seconds the motion that the government should first enact legislation to require that for packaged food materials, the packaging material should not make up more than 10% of the weight in order that we can reduce the waste derived from packaging materials before we extend the SCNT landfill. Will those who are in favour please put up your hands? Albert Chan, Sid Ho, Fernando Zhang, Kenneth Chan, and Gary Fan. 5 in favour. Those against? Alice Mack, Wong Kok Hing, Leung Chi Chang, Tam Yu Chung, Chen Kam Lam, Chen Hang Ban, Elizabeth Kwok, Yip Kok Him, Ann Chang, Chanakan, Christopher Chung, and Frankie Yek. Abstention? So we have 5 for, 12 against the motion. The motion is not carried. Next, this committee agrees to deal with the motion number 53 moved by Gary Fan pursuant to Section 32A of our Rules of Procedure. Chairman, I'd like to call for a division. I'll get a bell ring for a minute. According to Section 32A of the PWSC Rules of Procedure, I, Gary Fan, moves and Albert Chen seconds the motion that the government should first of all provide for drinking fountains in all government properties, encourage the general public to carry their own drinking bottles in order to reduce plastic waste before we extend the SCNT landfill.
好。 贊成嘅委員請舉手。
Those in favour, please put up your hands. Albert Chan, Sid Ho, Fernando Joe, Kenneth Chan, and Gary Fan. Those against? Alice Mack, Wong Kok Heng, Leung Chi Chung, Tam Yo Chung, Chen Kam Lam, Elizabeth Quat, Chen Hang Pan, Yip Kok Him, Ann Chang, Chen Ak Kan, Christopher Chung, and Frankie Yek. So 5 for, 12 against. Any abstention? None. So again, the motion is not carried. Next, this committee agrees to deal with motion 54, moved by Gary Fan, pursuant to section 32A of our rules of procedure. Chairman, I'd like to ask for division. We're about to stop. We'll pause after motion 55. No? I need to, ask for, a break because I'll need to look at all the new submissions, new motions coming in. Chairman, I'd like to call for division. Okay, the bell will ring for a minute. Pursuant to Section 32A of the Rules of Procedure of the PWSC, I, Gary Fan, moves and Albert Chen seconds the motion that the government is still allowing the MTRC to build property at Lois Park. As a result, more and more people are affected by the landfill. We urge the government and MTRC to negotiate and to stop the tendering for the different phases of Lois Park development before extending the South NT landfill.
贊成嘅委員請舉手。
In favour? Albert Chan, Sid Ho, Fernando Zhang, Kenneth Chan, and Gary Fan. Those against? Alice Mack, Wong Kok Heng, Leung Chi Chung, Tam Yo Chung, Chen Kam Lam, Chen Hang Pan, Elizabeth Quat, Yip Kok Him, Ann Chang, Chen Ak Kan, Christopher Chung, and Frankie Yek. Abstention? So we have 5 for, 12 against the motion, and no abstention. The motion is not carried. Next, this committee agrees to deal with motion number 55, moved by Gary Fan, pursuant to Section 32A of our Rules of Procedure. Chairman, I'd like to call for division. The bell will ring for a minute. Pursuant to Section 32A of the PWSC Rules of Procedure, I, Gary Fan, moves and Albert Chen seconds the motion that at the moment construction waste take up about 25% of the landfill capacity. We urge the government to reduce the number of infrastructural projects before extending the South NT landfill.
贊成嘅委員請舉手。
Those who are in favour, please put up your hands. Albert Chan, Sid Ho, Fernando Zhang, Kenneth Chan, and Gary Fan. Those against? Alice Mack, Wong Kok Heng, Leung Chi Chung, Tam Yo Chung, Chen Hang Pan, Chen Kam Lam, Elizabeth Quat, Yip Kok Him, Ann Chang, Chen Ak Kan, Christopher Chung, and Frankie Yek. Abstention? So we're 5 for, 12 against the motion. I declare that the motion is not carried. So now, as I said earlier, we have received 49, new motions. So we will, break for 10 minutes, and for me, so that I will deal with the clerk as how we'll deal with those motions. We're scheduled to finish at 12:45. I declare that we will extend the meeting until 1 p.m. Chen Kam Lam, Chairman. I think the motions that we are dealing with today, as many members already pointed out, are frivolous and is not in order. So after we resume the meeting later on, I hope that when you discuss with the Secretariat the motions which have come in, please vet them carefully to see whether or not they're relevant to our agenda. I think I've heard your comment. What we now need to deal with are the motions. These are just additional views to be forwarded to the Finance Committee. Okay, Chen Kam Lam. Kenneth Chan, first of all, I hope you will note that according to our rules of procedure, if we have members who do not agree that the meeting be extended, well, the chairman has the prerogative to extend it by 15 minutes. Next, I'd like to propose to you, Chairman, that in order to save the environment, since you have the motion, projected on the screen already, I don't think we need to put them in print. Please do not, print them out, because it's too cruel for the trees. So if we all agree, I don't think we should waste any papers. Well, if they move any amendments, then we don't need to bother at all in the first place. Okay, the clerk. Well, I think if members agree, then the clerk will not print out the motions. We'll adjourn for 10 minutes.